Question 11b. A function f of x is given by x squared plus 4x plus 7. Part 1. Explain why the domain of the function f of x must be restricted if f of x is to have an inverse function. For the function f of x to have an inverse function, f of x must be a one-to-one relationship. Geometrically, the graph of y equals f of x must pass the horizontal line test if f of x is to have an inverse function. Now, f of x equals x squared plus 4x plus 7 represents a many-to-one relationship, as the graph of y equals f of x is a concave up parabola. Hence, the domain must be restricted for an inverse function to exist. Part 2. Give the equation for f inverse of x if the domain of f of x is restricted to x greater than or equal to negative 2. Swap the x and y variables in the function y equals x squared plus 4x plus 7 and make y the subject. So swapping the variables around, we have x is equal to y squared plus 4y plus 7. Swapping both sides of the equation around so that the y variables are all on the left-hand side, we have y squared plus 4y plus 7 is equal to x. Subtracting 3 from both sides of the equation so we end up with a perfect square on the left-hand side, we have y squared plus 4y plus 4 is equal to x minus 3. Factorising the left-hand side, we have y plus 2 all squared is equal to x minus 3. Taking the square root of both sides, we get y plus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of x minus 3. Subtracting 2 from both sides of the equation so that y is the subject, y is equal to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of x minus 3. Now note that the domain of f of x is greater than or equal to negative 2, as this is the restriction that's been given in the question, which implies that the range of f inverse of x is y is greater than or equal to negative 2. Therefore, f inverse of x is equal to negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 3. Part 3. State the domain and range of f inverse of x, given the restriction in Part 2. The domain of f of x is greater than or equal to negative 2, which corresponds to the restriction given in Part 2. Hence, the range of f inverse of x is y is greater than or equal to negative 2. From Part 2, f inverse of x is equal to negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 3. F inverse of x is defined for x minus 3 greater than or equal to 0, as we can't have a negative value inside the surd. Hence, the domain of f inverse of x is greater than or equal to 3. Part 4. Sketch the curve y equals f inverse of x. The graph of y equals f inverse of x is a monotonic increasing function starting at the point 3, negative 2. To find the x-intercept, solve for x the equation negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 3 is equal to 0. Adding 2 to both sides of the equation, we have the square root of x minus 3 is equal to 2. Squaring both sides, we get x minus 3 is equal to 4. Finally, adding 3 to both sides of the equation to make x the subject, we get x is equal to 7. The following is a sketch of the curve y equals f inverse of x, where f inverse of x is equal to negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 3. Starting from the point 3, negative 2, and note that it's a closed circle because that point is included in the graph, passing through an x-intercept of 7.